Hello, it's RuneScape, and welcome to this week's weekly livestream. I'm your host, Mod Sween, and I'm delighted to be joined by Mod Rock.
Hello.
Mod West.
Hey.
Mod Husky.
Yeah.
And we've got Mod Spear running things behind the scenes, and we've got Mod Acorn and Mod Arcane on the chat. So if you have any questions you'd like to ask us, at OSRS or Jagex Arcane, and they'll pass on any questions to us to answer on the stream. We'll begin with the usual announcements before we get into the questions. Firstly, the Twitch Prime free membership offer is still active. !Prime to learn more. I think the offer ends next Tuesday, so no time to lose. !Darkmeyer, you might have missed it, I can't see how, but we released that last week. The release wasn't quite so smooth, we'll talk about that in a bit, but it's out now, definitely go and play it. Next up, Gazette, because yesterday we released Old School's monthly blog. Lots of stuff to talk about. Our PvP vision, a bit of an update on that from one we proposed in March originally. We'll talk about that a bit later on. Some insight into a proposed Wilderness hub. Talking about our art style of the game. Some insight into development of the clan process. And also introduce you to 2 new JMods. Right, that wraps up the announcements, I believe. So first things first, how is everybody? Let's start on the left with Mod Rock.
I'm pretty good. It's been a busy couple of weeks. Getting some stuff out from the operators team, getting Pole 71 stuff out. Then Darkmeyer last week and all the fixes this week, but we're still going strong. We're still here.
That's good. That's all I want to ask. Hey, Mod West, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Looking forward to the weekend. Getting back to my Animal Crossing island because I got some ideas. I go from designing one level in Old School to moving to my island. Just all I do.
Are you sharing anything of your island on your social media?
Once I've got the final layout finished, I'm going to do like a time lapse of the actual map changing. It's going to be quite cool.
Oh, nice. All right, Mod Husky, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Had a busy week with trying to get as many feedback changes to the Sepulchre as possible, and weekend for me was just playtesting that content that we put out. So yeah, well, playtesting, real testing. I get real playing. I don't know what the term is, but I was doing it to get obviously feedback and to try and relate to all the players with any problems they might have, and see what we need to do for the in the update.
You look super comfy, by the way. Like, are you reclined?
Yes.
It looks like you're on the sofa behind you.
Yeah, it looks like you've got your laptop on your lap and you're just chilling, man.
No, I'm in my chair. I'm just slightly reclined. And the camera slightly angled down.
What is everybody up to this past week? Mod Rock, anything interesting there?
I'm currently working on getting the 99 cooking banked on my hardcore, so I've got 63,000 Karambwans to fish. About 20k in now, and I am starting to lose my sanity, but it's all about trying to get higher up in those internal high scores. That's all I'm doing now. Playing for ranks.
I'm doing the opposite. I'm losing ranks.
You're losing ranks. That's what you've been up to this week, is losing ranks.
Yeah, I think just Modrog's about to overtake me. I think so.
I think I did that last week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I haven't not checked for a while.
We gaming.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was already mentioned I'll be going to my island this weekend to decorate, I suppose. Anything else planned? Probably take the dogs out, go for a big walk. Yeah.
Nice. Well, Husky, same for you? I mean, you've got a beautiful dog.
Yeah, he doesn't get any stop for walks. It's out for 2 hours every day. So yeah, just gonna be enjoying that, I suppose.
Nice.
To be honest, I'm more looking forward to next week, where I've booked some time off surrounding the weekend to actually, take a break after working on a huge project. So
is that allowed? Because I don't get that.
Okay. I'd just like to ask on the stream, and we released a news post last week, but let's see if we can go into any more detail or share some insight into anybody who didn't pay attention. Last week's release, the Darkmeyer, whilst awesome, led to a rollback as well. What exactly happened to cause this rollback?
It's actually relatively quite simple. as we release content, it then gets moved into what we call a master branch, which is basically a snapshot of what the game was, of the update. And when we build a new release stream for the next update, we make sure we put something which is called the pack folders, which contains all the item IDs, the location IDs, etc., as they are in the live game, into the next release. What happened was that this didn't occur. So when all the content was merged in, some of the IDs of the newer items were basically overwriting some of the IDs of the previous update ones, which is why players saw their twisted ancestral pieces and their pets turn into things from the Hallowed Sepulchre. And as soon as we realized this, it's not something you can hotfix. So basically we took the game down to then review what the extent of the issue was. And as soon as we realized what it was, we did what we felt was right by the players, was to roll back, because people could and did theoretically lose some of the items that they'd worked hard for, and then essentially redo the update in terms of putting the code into the right place, running all the pack tools, etc., and then relaunching it with everything having the correct IDs that it should do.
Okay. What was the feeling like when we released the content? We were super excited, super hyped, and we realised we had to roll back. I'm going to start with you, Modrock, and we'll work our way along.
So for me, it was kind of like built up all the hype. This was the first time I'd had to turn the game off, so it's a little bit nerve-wracking for me.
Okay.
It's not something I want to make a habit of, mind you, of course. But as soon as you turn the game off, panicking won't help anyone. And for all of what happens over a game update is everyone that's essentially involved jumps into a group voice call, and you go through the process and decide what needs to be done in a timely manner. And everyone was, it's like, okay, we've turned it off, not a lot we can do about that. Now what do we do? How do we fix it? How do we get the content back in the players' hands as soon as possible? And that occurred over a couple of hours, where we had to do the rollback of the save. Is probably the bit that takes the longest, while I was dealing with putting the code into the right essentially into the right place. And yeah, there's no panicking behind the scenes. There's no fires running around, people shouting their heads off. It's a lot calmer than you would expect when you're having to turn off what is the game that so many people play day in, day out.
So you were ice cold, Western Husky. Were your experience any different to that? Were you stressing at all, or were you equally as chill?
I'd say mine was considerably more relaxed. As an artist, we don't really have much involvement with the release. So, I mean, I generally feel quite bad when something goes wrong, because I can't really do anything to help. So I just have to sit there and watch, I suppose.
All pretty pictures.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I guess for me, I went through several phases. The first one was obviously anticipation. Everyone's getting to play the update. I'm excited for people to try what I've been working on for months. Oh, did I do something wrong? Right? I think that was like my first thought, and then I realized, oh, it wasn't actually something that like I'd personally done wrong, like as far as like or overlooked. For that, it was just like, okay, now, okay, glad we're doing the rollback because that's right for the players. But then it was just a bunch of waiting, right? You know, it obviously took a lot of time, and it wasn't work that I guess that it was us that were doing. So it was just kind of that slow build up of anticipation that I first went through, with being like, okay, but also please work, please be okay when we come back from the rollback, and also again just sort of waiting for people, I guess, to get to the Sepulchre and to give their feedback on it, you know.
I think it's a case.
Yeah, go on, Justin.
Sorry, I think it's a case of that you build up all this adrenaline, and then because you've had to shut the game off, you just go, and then your body then starts to build it up again. So you're kind of you get a little bit of like the shaky nerves again when a big update's coming out, and having to go through that like twice in one morning or one day. It can be a bit tiring on the brain.
So of course, when we release some content, we're waiting for players to get into it and find the bugs that we haven't found. So that was almost delayed quite a while. But we adapted our schedules accordingly. We were up fixing things. On the topic of that, fixing things, I'm seeing people in the chat asking questions about things like the flames in the Sepulchre. Do you want to give a bit of an update on that? Whether there's going to be fixes, anything else that's still bugged that we're looking to work on?
Yeah, I guess that's actually an ongoing discussion right now. I thought that the fix to the desynchronization of the statues, essentially what I started doing was I was then saying, hey, on this game cycle, I want you to animate. But for some reason, that was now causing another issue where sometimes there were no fires at all for some reason. And instead of persisting that, I think there's kind of two sides. Do you want a fire to be there and you can technically run through it because you haven't realized it's turned off and that'll look weird? Or do you want to be hit by an invisible fire? Which I think the former was probably better, right? Where that you'd rather at least see what was damaging you and not realize that it turned off a cycle earlier, you know? But I think there's actually something gone wrong with that hotfix to revert it back, and it's still currently the invisible fire, and we're currently looking into it. So, yeah, so obviously we'd like that, and I think that what it's going to take is for me to rewrite that system a little bit next week to kind of change fundamentally how it works, because we had that suggestion with passing in the cycle hasn't quite worked out where we want it to be. But we hear what the players say. Obviously, we want the traps to be as representing visually exactly what's happening, right? So,
okay.
Yeah.
Just to reassure players, we are looking to resolve that. Try to fix. Didn't quite work. We'll try another fix as soon as we can. Okay. Before we move on to questions from the chat and the questions from the document I've got, another bit of scheduling change was the game update taking place today rather than yesterday. What was the reason for this?
So, myself, Mod Husky, Mod Bruno, Mod Ash, we got together. Was it Tuesday or Wednesday? I can't remember which day it was, but we looked at what we had in the update, and it was a case of time. Do we cut some things from the update that are perhaps more feedback as opposed to bugs, or do we push the game back date up a day, give ourselves 24 more hours to be able to get all of the content in order to make all the bug fixes in the update the best we feel it could be? So we made the decision to take the extra 24 hours to get more into the update so players could experience the content in the best possible manner. And from what I've seen today, it was definitely the right choice that we made. And I personally don't have an issue if we were to perhaps adjust when the update goes out, if it means that the player get to experience something better.
Sure, yeah, we should be as flexible as possible to give the best experience to the player. I mean, it sounds like you're describing either we risk the update going out early, but without being thoroughly tested, or we have to postpone a week and prevent players getting their hands on all the changes and fixes they want otherwise. So
yeah,
if we're comfortable with a Friday release, then sure. I mean, let's be flexible.
We wasn't as concerned as perhaps like if we wouldn't do a massive update on a Friday because we like having the day after the update to be able to apply the fixes, etc. Because this week was more around bug fixes and feedback. It wasn't as hard hitting as full content. Therefore, we knew we could be a lot safer with releasing it on the Friday and still having the time, if we needed it, to go through and make adjustments.
Cool. Okay. Right, I want to take some questions from the chat before we move on. Snowpecker asks us, Gauntlet changes when?
So the other changes from Poll 71 will be coming over the next few weeks. We do prefer to batch the updates so that all the Gauntlet stuff can come out at one time. In the case of Chambers of Xeric, we had to do it over 2 weeks because there were so many. But that's kind of how we do it. We batch them together, and when they're ready, we ship them out. We don't have any particular order that we do them in. It's a case of what ones can we feel might have either the best impact, or can we put together to have a cohesive update so it's not just a couple of small things. We do like to try and get as much content in the update if we feel we can. If that means a particular piece of content that a player or a number of players want, then that's unfortunately why it is. But because it's been polled, that means we are going to do it generally. So over the next few weeks is when we expect to get the rest of Poll 71 content into the players' hands.
Including monkey backpacks, which I see Danny Man is asking about in the chat as well.
Yes, monkey backpacks are in there, of course. They were polled, so
Excellent.
from what I understand, I believe they are awaiting QA at this point. I'm not 100% certain on that. But yeah, we've got a whole load of stuff ready to try and ready to go through for next week from Poll 71.
Cool. Okay, sounds good. Right, Limzard has a question which I think is graphical in nature, so I'm looking at you, Mod West.
Go for it.
Do you think you guys could do a quick fix on some animations for pets? For example, the Chaos Elemental pet has a slight pause that's pretty noticeable.
I can't say I know what they're talking about, but I can have a look at that for sure. I know there's I remember when I made the Court Beast, when we actually added the actual Court Beast's model, not just the core. I ended up redoing the animations for that pet because the animations on the actual Corp are really quite bad. There's only 3 or 4 frames for the walk cycle. Obviously, the Corp doesn't really move around much, so it's not big of an issue. But obviously, the pet needed that updating, so I updated it for that one. So it's certainly things we look at when we work on new pets. So yeah, you can definitely look at that.
Second,
there was another question about the group pet I saw in here as well. So it's probably someone's mentioning how it looked a bit the movement of it seemed a bit what's the word? Like a bit fast, I suppose. But I had a look at that one myself, and that one didn't seem that bad. And that's the first time anyone's ever brought that up. So it's worth a review of looking at them all for sure.
How would you prefer players to get in touch about these types of things? Does it warrant a bug report?
If it's something so specific like this, I would say a video would be quite handy, or just a little GIF just to show them their exact part that they're concerned about. Because if it's an animation, it's a lot easier to understand what they're talking about when we're actually seeing it in front of us, rather than just having it described to us.
Okay. So Xaux has a question regarding this week's game update. He asked, "What was the justification for the Blisterwood Nerf?"
Modhusky might have a bit more information than me, but from what I understand, it was kind of a little bit more than we'd hoped the Blisterwood tree to be.
Yeah, I wasn't actually part of the decision making for that, so I can't really shed more light on it, other than it wasn't intended to be as good of a training activity than it ended up being. And if it is something that the players perhaps did want, because it was an activity we never really polled as part of the content, right? It was just like hey, this tree existed. It's mostly a quest thing, and the fact that it gave such good XP, maybe we just add it to a poll and say, hey, would you like this back as an actual content method? But it was just something that we didn't intend and was a side effect. And we're like, is this okay? We'll just nerf it for now. I think that was, but I honestly couldn't tell you what the exact, if there was any more thought process to it than that, because I've been focused, sort of eye deep in all the Sepulchre changes.
Okay. It makes sense. But I do kind of feel like if we were to say, hey, there was lots of XP coming, we stopped it, would you like lots of XP, yes or no? Then the answer is probably going to be yes.
I think it was more of the fact that it was very much, I did see some players calling it like a Redwood Light, because it has all the requirements of the quests to get there. So if you don't particularly have the ability to do those quests or don't want to do them, you still have the regular training methods. But it was kind of more of a slightly more AFK experience for the people that put in the time and effort.
Okay. Right, moving on to the next question from the chat. Sorry for the pronunciation here. Viziers of Chaos asks, how is COVID affecting your guys' work? Will you soon be returning to Jagex HQ? I mean, we've been working remotely for quite a while now. I think I don't want to talk for everybody, I feel like we're getting used to it. For any return to the studio, no date has been decided upon yet. For what it seems like, we're probably going to be working remotely for most of this year, or at least the rest of this year. But looking at how we're managing to complete tasks and test content, we're largely uninterrupted. Probably a slight negative dent to efficiency and morale, but we're trying to counter ways for that. Was it last Friday we had an old school team jolly where we did a big quiz, I think 35 of us were involved, prizes on offer, we each got a takeaway, so lots of ASMR of us eating each other's and stuff. It was fun. So we're trying to do more of those kind of activities, because if this is going to be the new normal for the rest of the year, it's important to keep morale up.
Yeah, the company does also offer things like where they do, was it one Friday a month or maybe even 2 Fridays a month now? They do fun things like quizzes and bingos to keep the staff engaged. and bring a little bit more of the social side that we can't perhaps have right now, other than talking to your colleagues through Zoom calls and things like that. So they are very much thinking about our well-being and trying to make us almost like business as normal, but just not at the business.
Yeah, I can agree with all that. I found like the most strangest thing is my cat. I'm constantly around my cat now, and she's constantly asking to go in and out, and that's probably why I'm moving around and out of shot so much, because the cat's trying to get out. So yeah, it's been a bit weird being at home, but I mean, I'm used to it now, and fairly comfortable. Adjusted my sleeping routine too, and it's a lot nicer now because you don't have to commute. But I mean, yeah, still definitely miss the office.
I think tomorrow actually means 3 months since I started working at home, because I think I was part of the few people that did the trial run of being at home to see how the company could adjust. So yeah, it's been crazy to think that it's been 3 months already.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Over, isn't it? Jeez.
Like...
Right, okay. Next question also concerns today's game update. Carlos Games asks, why is Partner Slayer not possible anymore? And when will it be back up?
So Partner Slayer in itself, I don't know if anyone remembers what it was like in RuneScape, and I think the idea was to try and bring back something that had that kind of feel. And unfortunately, with the systems that were available at the time, it wasn't quite as possible to offer that. So it's a case of offering the best thing available without the permanent IDs that will come with Group Iron Man. So all credit to Modash, he did everything he could with what he had at the time in that content, and it still was fun if you wanted to go like hang out with a mate and do the same Slayer task. But there are unforeseen things that came up that players had worked out within the content, like how you see with tick manipulation systems that people didn't know about a few years ago that people are learning and discovering. I think there's more something along those lines which allowed them to perhaps use the system in ways that weren't originally understood or thought possible or even wanted. So the best way to deal with things like that is to take the content away in the meantime, review and see what the best thing is we can do with it, whether that's to hold it off until we can build a proper system with Group Iron Man, whether that's to pull a couple of things out that players liked as a result. It's better for us to restrict the content and then properly review it than try and bodge fix it and essentially messing it up. And that's not something that we want to do.
Cool. Okay, makes sense. Right, let's move on to some questions we've got regarding Darkmeyer. So Modcast is probably leaning on you quite heavily here, but obviously Rock and West, feel free to engage if you like. Berserker asked, is there a reason that the Daeyalt Essence can't be noted? Ultimate Iron Man really suffered doing this method for RuneCraft.
Yeah, there is one big blocker, which is it's an untradeable, and untradeable items can't be noted. The content really wasn't designed with ultimates in mind, and the best solution we could come up with when we kind of realized that was just to give the essence straight to them instead of obviously putting it in their bank. It really isn't the best, and I wish we kind of could give it to them noted, but I don't know. I guess just coming to my thought now, what if we made it so that you could just use the shards and get a full set of them? I don't know. We'd have to look around at it, but ultimately, I guess it wasn't designed with ultimates in mind, you know? So maybe we can look at something like that to fix it, but I'll discuss it with the team if we can do something like that.
Okay. RSN Adam asked the next question, which is, will there be any changes to the Bloody Fury and its healing effect?
Maybe. I guess it depends on you guys. We've spoken about it a bit internally. We know it's quite lackluster. I think some of us kind of half expected it to be lackluster, and it comes down to more like, should we pull it slightly weaker and buff it, as opposed to pull it too strong, it passes, and then nerf it? I'm actually having a lot of those discussions with players right now about the Sepulchre, quite interestingly enough. But yeah, I think that we plan to put some sort of buff to it in a coming poll, and it depends on if the players like that buff. And we'll see where it goes from there.
Okay. Are there any more changes to be made next week regarding the Sepulchre or Darkmeyer? Any that you know of that they can expect next week, rather than just like conceptual stuff like the Bloody Fury changes we just discussed?
Sure. So regarding the Sepulchre, hopefully a fix to Scuff Flames. Hopefully the next one takes. I'm going to rewrite that system as I spoke about earlier. I think that's the biggest one. I want to continue, obviously, reviewing and monitoring the XP rates and marks. There's quite a discussion going on of how good should it be versus rooftops. Is that looting? Is that not looting? What player skills should be determined? Should I balance it around the people who are currently doing it like the best, tick perfect? Should it be balanced around the average player? It's really hard to sort of get that right, especially because looting coffins isn't exactly a science either. Like as far as like what that means, is that saying like I was speaking to someone and they were looting floors 2, 3, and 4 and doing 1 to 4, and I'm like, okay, well, I kind of assumed you'd only loot floor 4, right? Maybe floor 3, but you're doing 2 as well, so you are getting less XP. But is that it's kind of difficult, and I think that the truth is that it just needs to feel right. It needs to feel like the content's worth it, and that's ultimately what I'm sort of aiming for. I think after the changes to floor 5 today, I think it's going to be in a fairly good spot with even people looting and really good at it are still pushing like high 70s, 80k XP an hour while looting, right? I'm expecting people to be pushing 85 to 90k if they're absolutely insane at this. But the people who are maybe struggling and maybe looting and not quite getting full runs and we're getting like sort of that 75k XP an hour mark are probably closer to like 68, 69k, which I mean, you're still looting, you're still making quite a few mistakes, there's still room for improvement, and you're still getting more XP than rooftops, and I think that's fine. If other floors need buffed in the coming weeks, I can look to maybe move some of the XP that you're getting at the end of floor 5 and share that a little bit more amongst the other floors, just to bring them up. But I want to do some more testing on that first, and more importantly, I guess, fix some of the bigger issues such as these flames and other things.
Cool, okay. Have we considered the storage space with the new items introduced with the Hallowed Sepulchre? So they take up a lot of bank space. Have we considered something like a chest in the lobby to store any Hallowed items? Anything like that?
I do like the idea. I think the perfect system would be something like a tool leprechaun, I suppose, or something like that. You know, the equivalent where you just store one in at once. The cheapest solution would be just something like a stash unit where you have to have them all and then only you can store them all. It kind of depends how much dev work you want to do into it, but I have seen that feedback come up, and unfortunately, it's just been deprioritized, I suppose, amongst some of the other fixes and stuff we want to do to the content.
Cool. Okay.
The players want a hallowed leprechaun now.
What you want is a really, really small vampire with a top hat, you know, and he's going to hold your items.
I do know, you're right.
But don't forget, we made a slightly different leprechaun underwater for the fossil island, so you can just make one that's a vampiric leprechaun.
Yeah.
Perfect. Right, okay. Next question talks about the difficulty of the Sepulchre on mobile or in fixed mode. Are we changing anything to help those players?
Yeah, we made a change today which should help that. The biggest issue, I think, on fixed was the bolts. Especially when you get to the later floors, they're so fast and you have so little time to react to them that players found that they have to zoom out quite a bit on fixed to see them. And then, even then, like, because you're so zoomed out, you're looking at these itty-bitty tiny bolts on the screen. Because they're bigger, hopefully that should help. I've also heard from players they meant like an animation on the statues to help indicate it a little bit earlier than just the statues moving. Just some sort of color or something. We can look into doing potentially something like that if we think it works. Mobile is always going to be interesting. I know people have done it on time in mobile. It's hard, but I don't think we should necessarily balance content around that per se. I know that like there's already like very difficult content in the game for mobile, right? Like Theater of Blood, right? Should we make a specific mechanic easier to do because that'd be really hard to do on mobile? I'm not too sure. We're definitely going to make it possible to do, but it's sort of interesting with that. Yeah, and I suppose I can only apologize to those people playing on fixed mode. I'll admit I played it fully unresizable during development and my own testing, and if I do content like this in the future, I will absolutely make sure to see what it's like on fixed mode, right? You know?
Yeah, same.
Makes sense. Okay, next question. So what are your thoughts of adding an elite Morytania diary reward as being able to access the city without having to wear the Vyre noble gear?
I don't like throwing things on diaries just for the sake of it. I would rather say perhaps the ability to do that came from the next quest in the storyline, like what happened with Monkey Madness 2. Once you complete Monkey Madness 2, you can walk around the island. That might be diary related as well, but features like that which require the next piece of content rather than existing content, I always find is a much nicer way of doing it, because it gives people in the future a much more sense of progression as they go through the game, and that's ultimately what the game is about, as opposed to just handing it to people like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. You are right that it is Monkey Madness 2. It's not diary related at all, and I think that kind of makes sense, right? Dracan is still a power in Darkmeyer, right? Vampires are still there and don't like humans. And that was the idea with the monkeys, right? They didn't like humans on their island, and if something happens in the next storyline, whether there's a peace treaty or whether you get rid of the big threat or whatever happens, because I don't think even we know that right now, that makes more sense to come from that. I don't think a vampire would go, oh, I don't like you, but because you've done some random things around Morytania, like, I'm going to suddenly be okay with you coming in our city, you know?
Yeah, it sort of messes with the lore a little bit in an awkward way, so not ideal.
Just feature creeping on this question. How would you feel about doing some like retroactive changes to existing dive reward? Do you know Fairy Rings, for example? If we were to release like a sequel to the Fairy series, what if that reward was to allow you to use the rings without the staff, and we remove it from the diary? Is that kind of along your way of thinking?
I would be happy to see it that way. It wouldn't necessarily be as much, as long as the quest was kind of relative to the fact that that's an elite reward. So if we were looking at perhaps a Master to Grandmaster quest in the Fairy series to continue that on, because by God, I'd like to get rid of the orcs in that area. They don't belong. So yeah, it's very much, if it fits, then yes. But I wouldn't go back and perhaps like add new diary tasks and things like that, because that makes it a little bit more awkward when you're having to remove people's capes and things like that. And we've seen with the quest cape people accept it, but because it's never happened with the diary cape, I do feel, other than when we added Kebos, people wouldn't necessarily like that as much. But as long as the replacement of where the reward is going is equal or relatively equal in terms of the difficulty to have unlocked it, then I would be fine with that.
Okay, makes sense. Right, last question I've got for Darkmeyer. There are some more in the chat, which we'll get to though. Are there any plans to add Grand Hallowed Coffin opens to the HiScores, so you'll be able to track accordingly?
I am hesitant about adding anything else to the HiScores and sort of feature creeping out what is already there until we are happy with the loading of the HiScores. I think that we kind of have to for bosses now, because it's just there are now bosses on that HiScores. So having one missing would feel weird. But there's a lot of like small things I guess I've seen players want to have on here. And if we ever did add like a miscellaneous other section, once we were happy, I feel like that sort of content would absolutely fit like a miscellaneous section of the HiScores, you know, because it's not really a boss and it's not a skill, and we do have some mini games, but it's also like at that point I'd rather have that HiScore be tracking minigame completions as opposed to specific like coffin opens, you know.
I mean, it's in the achievement diary section in the POH, isn't it? That you can see those kind of counters again. Just not really a high score.
Maybe, and if it isn't, it probably should be, and I'll write that down to check.
Designing content in front of your eyes.
Okay, let's take some questions from the chat. RS Hoyer asked, can you address the hard mode Inferno rumour and change the dialogue upon killing Zuck? Is that reveal going to happen on this live stream right now?
Nope. What dialogue change?
I do wonder if most people in the chat have seen it or not. So the answer is no. We'll move on from that one. Metsi Mato asked, will you be watching the Battle Royale? So this is referring to EVScape's event happening tomorrow.
For me, definitely. I've been working with EVScape to get things to assist from our side. That's working with Mod Bolton to kind of make it happen, as it were, in the best possible way for Evie, so I'm definitely looking forward. And the hype trailers that he's put out there are of a really good quality, in my opinion. So I'm pumped for it. I'm ready to go. I want to jump in myself.
Yeah, it sounds really cool. I'm excited to see it.
I think I have plans tomorrow, but it should be cool anyway. I'll probably catch the VOD.
Yeah, so EVScape will be streaming it live on his Twitch channel, so /EVScape. I understand it's all going to be shown from his perspective, and then there'll be a compilation video released afterwards, which will capture the perspective of all the 16 creators taking part. Was it 14, including 2 casters? One of those.
It's 16 and 2 casters.
2 casters, cool. Okay, another question from the chat. This is from Stostein. Any chance of a buff to Blisterwood Flail special attack? It's the same as before Sins and really is useless currently.
I don't really know much about the Blisterwood weapons myself personally, so I'm not sure on that one.
Because I know the special attack makes you like capture Juvenates, isn't it?
Something like that.
Okay, well, we can simply say we don't know, but we'll ask the same question again next week. And
I think you have to remember that I believe Authority's Aid exists as well, which allows you to use regular weapons against those creatures, I believe. So I'm not sure how much a change in the Blisterwood weapons would make a difference unless people really don't either know about those or want to use those at all.
Chat's saying that doesn't work for Vyres.
I don't think it works for the Fire Lord Sentinels. Off the top of my head.
If the players have a good idea for a special attack, we can always consider pulling one and adding it to it. Don't see any problem with that.
Keep in mind we've got another quest to come as well, probably.
True.
Right, okay, let's move on to the ton of questions we've got regarding yesterday's Guild Law Gazette. It's probably one of the longest gazettes we've released so far. Tons of articles, lots of good content. Let's start with probably the most pressing question that people have been asking in this chat as well, regarding Bounty Hunter. So firstly, I'd recommend hitting !Gazette, reading the article, specifically the PvP article, for a bit more context and information to the question and the answer we're giving. But the question is, given that selling emblems is becoming the norm, and it's making it difficult for actual players to get kills, what will Jagex end up doing with Bounty Hunter?
I can't speak for everyone on this, but my opinion is I don't think it particularly like the best thing about the Bounty Hunter system is the targeting part of it. So I'd like to retain that, but the problem that it's hard to deal with is when human interaction results in the outcome of what happens. So if you've got 2 humans that can skew the results in their favor, then they're going to do that because it's beneficial for them. And that's the kind of the hardest thing to design around, which is what we've tried to do over a couple of iterations. And unfortunately, it doesn't appear to have worked in the way that players have wanted it to. So if it's a case of remove it and that's it, we said that in the March Gazette, that if we feel that that is what's necessary, then that's what we'll do.
Okay, so Twitch is asking in the chat, what if you were to make all the rewards untradeable? We'll probably see the same boosting again, because there's no monetary value attached, but you still pay people to be able to obtain the untradables. So I'm going to read verbatim from yesterday's Gazette article. If you want to read along, !Gazette, that's 1Z, 2 T's. So I'll very quickly run through this. I mean, you don't want an audio book of me talking, so I won't be long. So this is regarding the return of Bounty Hunter. So we want to reiterate that we're aware of ongoing concerns around boosting since the Bounty Hunter return. We're assessing what to do next, and we'll update you once the decision's been made. When Bounty Hunter was removed earlier this year, we said we consider Bounty Hunter's place in Old School if we're unable to deliver a quality experience, which is what it seems like is happening right now. One solution being considered is the replacement of the Bounty Hunter minigame with worlds which have the target system active, and only the target system. It would also be possible for us to implement a PJ timer on these worlds to further incentivize solo PKing activity. This would effectively make it a PKing task activity without any bespoke rewards, so just the loot you get from killing your opponents. The reason we're going for this is because without the unique reward system, the bespoke rewards, all you'd get is the loot you get from killing your opponents, which would then defeat the need for boosting. It would just be an activity for people who want to kill other players, and they'd have PJ timer in place, and they'd have the targeting system to allow them to do that. If we do explore this route, we would move the current rewards elsewhere, likely the last man standing in the shop, and we'd allow the Best of the Longsword to be wieldable on the target worlds, which we just talked about. We're also considering the idea of making blighted stuff usable on PvP worlds. So again, you can read the article yourself if you want to come back to what I just walked through. !Gazette. So that's currently where we are with Bounty Hunter. We haven't 100% decided on this path, but I feel like this has probably had the most support in the studio, and it's probably what we're going to go with. Accurate summary, do you reckon?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Okay, next question regarding the Gazette, and again the PvP section. Ratted24 asks, what is a very high-risk world, and how will it differ from a regular high-risk world?
So the idea, sorry if I'm taking a lot of the questions, a lot of the content I've kind of been involved in from this aspect with the PvP section of it. It's a very high-risk world basically removes the ability to protect items. A high-risk world stops you from using the prayer, but a very high-risk item will stop the 3 items protected when you're unskulled as well, meaning that every time when you die, you drop everything regardless of whether you're skulled or not.
Cool. And so we did see concerns about if we were to replace the existing high-risk worlds with very high-risk worlds and just change the flag, whether that would then, detrimentally affect the players who are raiding on those servers because they favour the stability or something. We'll keep that in mind, and we'll make sure that it's not just a straight flag swap, but probably a different world entirely. So if that's your home world, you're not suddenly going to die and then lose all your stuff. Okay, next question is, and it's referring to the new hub zone we suggested in the Gazette. What is, and I don't know how to pronounce this, but I read that if there's an apostrophe after the X, then you don't pronounce the X. So, what is Ferox Enclave, and when can we see it in game?
Is that really how it works?
That's what Google said to me.
I'm going with Ferox Enclave, and that's how I'm saying it. I might be saying it wrongly, but yeah. So Ferox Enclave is technically the wilderness hub. So we've taken Last Man Standing and Clan Wars, where they currently are just east of Alcred. We've moved them to just below the graveyard of the Forgotten
Shadows.
Graveyard of Shadows in level 15 wilderness. There we have Clan Wars slightly to the north, and then Clan Wars to the south, and then LMS to the north, and it's just a nice little hub area. If you go to the Gazette, you can see some lovely little GIFs as well as a map of the area. So yeah, the idea is to take wilderness content and sort of bring it into a central hub zone. So yeah, that's what Ferox Enclave is.
Okay, the next question is there only one way to get into the Enclave, or are there multiple entrances?
Wait, the previous question was when can we see it in game, wasn't it? And I didn't answer that. So, yeah, we'll go back to that in a second. We don't have a solidified date yet, but we're looking at next month. And the next one was, is there only one way to get in? No, there are 4 ways. So, 4 ways to walk in. There's also a canoe as well as a teleport. So you can go in from each direction, northeast, southwest. There's been a few concerns with a few of them being potentially clans could lock this down. Maybe it's a few choke points essentially, but there's only a choke point on the east side. The other sides are quite open, and even if there's a clan managing to lock the entire area down, you could move to a different world, I suppose, and they're not going to be able to lock down every world, are they? But yeah, the zone is a little bit smaller than obviously the entirety of the wilderness ditch, so there might be a chance of clans doing that, but I don't really feel like that's going to be a problem.
It's worth noting as well. You need to actually interact and click to be able to enter and exit the zone. So there's no danger of being like pulled out of the zone without your knowledge or your intention.
There's basically like 2 sort of boundaries to it. So you've got the initial hard out border that you have to click on to get through. It'll be like a little glowing barrier, and then there's a few tiles outside each entrance that gives you a bit of safe zone just to allow you to buffer in.
Cool. Sounds good. Next question is: will the hub, or the Ferox or Feroxes or whatever you want to call it, Enclave, will it be polled?
No. So much like the PvP stuff in the past, it's a minority and a supermajority polling system doesn't really work this way. So we're trying to give the PvPers something. We're trying to give them something that doesn't get voted down by the majority of other non-PvPers.
I think it's also paired with the fact that this is basically just moving content as opposed to like throwing lots of new things in. Like when we redesigned Last Man Standing from what it was to what it is. It's essentially content that isn't as used as much as it was. And the fact that it's still in a safe area, you can still teleport there without there being any issues.
I think we should also consider the intention behind it as well. So, when we introduced the bounty hunter changes and stuff like the Vesper's Longsword, I think there was, rightly so, a bit of division and lots of concerns and questioning about our motivation. With this one, we're not trying to force a gimmick into the wilderness or trying to force people to get involved and start killing other players or put themselves at risk to be killed. We're just trying to provide a bit of infrastructure within the wilderness to create more zones naturally for people who want to go into it. You don't have to. If you want to use it to respec or heal, as you do in Clan Wars now, you can still go and do that. You don't have to enter the wilderness. We're just moving stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I've tried to keep all of the LMS and Clan Wars sort of utilities around the area. I've tried to keep those all there. Anyway, anything that you'd use for Clan Wars, you can still use that area for Clan Wars. It's just essentially a area and visual change.
Cool. Okay, so the next question, and we've kind of covered already. Is the hub or the Enclave a safe zone in the middle of the wilderness? If so, are there any concerns of clans locking down the danger zones outside of it? That was asked by Mountain Lion.
Yes, I jumped the gun on that one earlier. I've also got a few comments from Modoasis. He doesn't see it becoming an issue. There's 4 entrances. It's quite easy to move between each one, and there'll be more activities around the Enclave, of course. But that's kind of the point, to generate more people playing around the area, and just having people viewing these people outside the hub fighting fighting PvP. It's going to just bring it more into everyone's consciousness, and they're going to see it more, which is going to be. It might encourage someone to go out and try it out one day. So yeah, I think it's going to be quite good.
It's not like we're removing the other ways that people can teleport into the wilderness and get around anyway. It's just a case of, if anything, when people are coming away from the activity that they're performing in the wilderness, if they're not able to teleport, then they've got even better chance of getting towards a safe area, really, than anything else. If you think you get teleblocked at Black Gins, then you're now only having to run to 15 to tank the timer, as opposed to having to run all the way out, etc.
Yeah, for sure.
The next question from Master Zap. Oh, sorry, do you want to carry on, West?
I was just going to mention, while it does technically make the wilderness a little bit more safer, that safe zone is going to be quite a hot spot. So it's a bit like complaining about technically there's a safe zone at the end of the wilderness where the mage bank is. While it's a little bit hard to get to because you've got to cut through the webs and it is a teleport in, it is the end of the wilderness, so it sort of makes sense. So I don't think it's that big of an issue.
Okay, so Biomaster Zap asks, with Clan Wars being in the Enclave, will players be able to teleport straight into the middle of the wilderness when using the Ring of Dueling? Where would a teleport take them in that case?
Yep, so I got some comments from Modoasis again here. So the existing minigame teleports for LMS and Clan Wars will get you to the Enclave safely. There's a bank there. You won't be. I tried to get the distance from the teleport to the bank quite similar. The ability to get into the free-for-all portal and recharge everything, it will be a bit close to the bank, but as a whole, I think it's still it's further away than all the other ones. So that's still it won't be best in slot for any of those sort of things.
We're also not forcing players to have to go into the portal anymore.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they're cool. Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
There's still the teleports to the burning amulet. I think it's what it's called. That still has teleports around the wilderness. Those still exist, as well as the Corp Cave. That's still unintegrated into the hub, and that obviously has the game's teleport there.
Sweet. Right. I'm conscious that we haven't got very long left, so I want to go back to some chat questions and probably then move on to some of the miscellaneous non-Darkmeyer, non-Gazette questions we've got asked. A Royal Hobo asks, are you planning on releasing the drop rate for the Ring of Endurance?
I am very happy with where the drop rate is, but saying that, I'd still like to reserve maybe another couple weeks or so before saying what that drop rate is, in case I do want to change it should any more changes come up in the next week or so. I think players maybe get a bit spoiled with drop rates, but I also understand why, because I like knowing them. So
I'm the opposite. I would like us to stop. And I mean, it's a little unfair because I'm on the inside. But as a whole, I would like to stop us releasing them at all. That's kind of like half the point of those grindy things, whether you know whether it's worth it or not, or you're doing it more because you want the item as opposed to it's like necessary to do it that way. It makes it more about the content rather than going for what is essentially the most efficient method to get to where you need.
I know it would fail a poll, but I'd be interesting to see what it would get. To see like general sort of player sentiment on whether we should release them or not.
Do we have the ability to do straw polls in our remote system?
I was talking about in-game poll, but I guess a straw poll would work.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they think.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Let's see how players feel about whether or not, even if they do want to rate, what level of detail they want, whether they want kind of niche cases where we say, if you do this, you're guaranteed a better chance, or whether we'll be really hands-off and say, yeah, it's 1 in whatever thousand.
Yeah.
Okay. Another question. So, Perfect Salad is asking, could the HP Orb Cure be made to prioritize Prayer Book Cure instead of the Sandview Cure? That's something possible, or something we'd like to do?
So they would rather it use a normal potion as opposed to using a Sandview, if there is both in there.
That's how I'm interpreting it. If I'm mistaken, Perfect Salad, please do correct that.
It's the prayer book cure, right? I think this is coming from the Sepulchre because people are taking the Great Brain Robbery prayer book because it's only a 2 poison heal, so it works quite 2 damage poison, so it works quite well. But if they've got a Sandview serum from a chest, it's using the Sandview serum instead of their book. I don't actually know. Should we make that orb use the book?
I think the idea is that it uses the most powerful thing first, because then it's guaranteed to cure the situation.
Yeah.
I would argue that perhaps then if you want to cure yourself using the book and using the cheaper method, then perhaps use the little bit of extra time it is to heal yourself by manually clicking as opposed to using the orb, but I wouldn't say it's something I was necessarily precious over.
Or we just make it not drop Sandviews and we're good, right?
Do that too?
Don't have the problem then. I don't know.
Okay, in the chat, a lot of people asking about the League's update. I'm going to point you towards the Gazette once again. It's ! Gazette, 1Z, 2 Ts, and I'll also read the update we shared anyway. But go and read it, it's good. So Leagues has officially started development. Detailed design work defining the list of relics and tasks is underway, and we're also trying something we've never done before, retaining some elements after resetting a save game. And this functionality was provided by Mod Vanguard. What does that mean, that little bit? Retaining elements after resetting a save game. Mod Husky, would you like to explain what that could mean?
Sure. So we had some league-to-league rewards that we had that we'd mentioned when we were looking at it, and one of them was obviously you get to keep your pets. One of them is that depending on your rank in the last league, that you might get like a little extra like package of goodies to start with, better than someone else. Just nothing's like obscene, but just like a hey, you played in the last league, so you get this. Potentially things like league worlds, like so if make maybe a rune rank world, an addy rank world, and potentially even like a little icon like in the chat that shows like maybe like a rune trophy if you got rune last time, right, or something like that. There are lots of things we'd like to play around with and sort of to help incentivize the continuation of playing through each league. So in order for that to happen, we obviously need to remember where you finished in the last league, and if we just wipe your save profile from the last league, then all that information's gone. So what I believe is we'll get commands, or we've been provided commands for the engine, which will allow us to wipe, I think it's everything except certain variables. I haven't looked at the commands myself, but we would specify which ones we want to keep, and then everything else gets wiped. I think that's how it works. But yeah, there's some quite interesting things that we've got there, and leagues will be where we're testing it, and I'm sure that a command like this could theoretically be useful for Deadman in the future if we do any more things like that and want to start connecting saves. because that's something we've seen come up a lot. Like I think in previous Deadmans, it was, hey, can we just keep like where we quested to in the seasonal when we reset? Like maybe we keep our quest progress, or maybe we keep like I don't know some of our gear or stats, but not all of them, and it just wasn't possible before, right? So
it'd be cool to be able to maybe carry like a few items or something like that between resets of like a Deadman season. So lots of potential for this engine change, and we'll try it out with League, see how it does, and then how we might be able to apply it to other seasonal content. That's good. Okay, let's move on to some miscellaneous questions we've got. So Ned Nost asks, will the Twitch Prime membership promotion ever be publicly addressed? Specifically that we see large spikes in bots whenever it happens. Are you open to looking at alternatives which have less harmful effects on the game, or looking at ways to reduce the amount that the promotion is abused? So lots of questions there, and I've kind of been able to pull them all into one thing. The key thing is that, so I've spoken to any cheating thing. Most of the accounts we're seeing as a result of the Twitch Prime stuff aren't necessarily bots, more manual played farmers, which doesn't make a difference. Like they're still having a negative effect on the game. One thing they wanted me to point out was that with this promotion, we're seeing a lot less than we have been in prior ones. And that's mainly for two reasons. Firstly is we've managed to improve our detection methods. Second one is we've been working with Amazon and Twitch Prime to help their detection methods improve as well. So that's something we want to keep doing. For us, the difficult thing of managed to balance what's good for the studio, which is reintroduce returning players or introduce new players through this promotion into the game, as well as give something to our existing players. This is like a nice to have, but also, keep away accounts that are looking to profit from it negatively. So in terms of addressing it, that's pretty much all I can say. We're going to keep improving our detection methods, keep collaborating with Amazon and Twitch to help them as well. But we are aware that you've got concerns around it and the types of accounts coming in and the activities they're doing. And we'll keep trying to resolve it and improve it for the future. Okay, Dr. Dilatory asks, is there anything at all you can tell us about plans, either already in the works or purely theoretical, for Raids 3?
I'd like to leave it longer this time before we do another one.
How long has it been? 2 years?
Nearly 2 years.
Yes, I think we already are slightly longer than what the difference between
1 and 2.
1 and 2, but
I feel like 2 years is a great cadence.
I think 2 years is good.
Yeah.
Better get started, guys.
I think the truth is that we internally know that potentially doing another raid is a piece of content that players would like, and we've seen a lot of player designs about what that could be, and we're not ready to share what that could be. I've seen some pretty interesting things going around the office, like just pitches from people, and maybe bits of one will be taken and bits of another will. But the truth is that that's not a project currently on our roadmap, right? So it's very much in a conceptual, theoretical space right now.
Probably
but there is a nice
that will be announced on the big stage at a big event by someone like you, rather than on a live stream at the end of the week by us.
Yeah, we definitely want to hype up something like that.
Yeah, and we still have that big hole in the map. So
beyond that, the next question I've got to ask is from Irish Dayman. With the whole IRL plague thing going on, can we expect to get a special Q&A or podcast to show next week's big content? The answer is we are looking into it. So, and sorry if you haven't already heard this news, but we announced it a while ago. RuneFest has been cancelled for this year. We're looking at returning again in 2021. I think ideally earlier in the year rather than later. But we have to see what the current situation is, what a venue's like, what a transport link's like between countries, and that kind of stuff. We are still investigating what a virtual event could look like. Typically with RuneFest, it's not just us doing big announcements, big reveals. It's also RuneScape, how you refer to it as RS3, doing the same thing. So it's about juggling our plans with their plans virtually, and also acknowledging that lots of our roadmaps have been affected by the fact that we're working from home. Not drastically, but a little bit as well. So we don't know yet, but we will tell you if we do, because we want you to watch it, of course. And I know lots of people are hungry for a virtual event. I think at the very least, I'd like to do more virtual events just around individual pieces of activity rather than one big virtual RuneFest. That's at the very least, anyway. The more we can interact with you, the best. So we'll let you know, but we're still investigating. I think we've got an events team at Jagex. They've got access to a few different tools and software. They're going to be showing off, seeing what's suitable for us, and then we can see whether or not we feel like it's worth putting on a show at a certain amount of time of the year to incorporate our roadmap within it. Okay, next question from Valor. Modcast, I'm probably going to be leaning on you for this one. Could you downscale the HP and defense level of the Nightmare boss down to 3 and 4 man teams, just like in Theatre of Blood? It's currently hard to find 5-man teams, and this would make the boss more accessible.
I actually was speaking to Mod Ed about this when I saw this question, just because I thought I'd be useful to get his opinion and weigh on in it as well. The first thing is that we wouldn't change the defense because the defense of Nightmare doesn't scale at all anyway. But I think the biggest thing is the HP, which if we scaled it to 3-man, you'd be looking at 1200 shield health, because it's 400 per player, which is very close to like doubling the speed of the kills for any group that is any 3-man group or less, right? And I guess the question would be, what would that do to the drop rates of the what would that do to the time to get the items and the prices of the items? And that's something that I don't think we could make a decision on that lightly. I understand the player's concern from that sort of thing. I think that obviously it never feels good to fight a boss that's scaled to 5 because you can't find a 5th person, right? Maybe there's things we can do with helping people find people to group with. I know we've got a themed world. I'm not sure how that's working, but I definitely think there's some more work that we need to look into for that, right? Because especially like if you're looking at like solo kills and stuff, like that would go down to about maybe 10 to 11 minute kills instead of closer to 20, right? Which is pretty big.
What about the idea of having a world queue where you register your want to do the activity, and then when enough people turn around and say they want to do the activity, we look at trying to get people over there, or if not, just tell them there are 5 people that want to get together, head over there now, kind of thing.
I think stuff like that could be interesting. I don't know how I'd potentially go about implementing it. Maybe. Group finder stuff is something I've also seen other games use. And what I wouldn't like is how other games have implemented it, where it's just like, hey, it teleports you right there, and that sort of thing, where you could be anywhere in the world and you're yoinked in and then you're yoinked back and stuff. I think that wouldn't be good. But there are definitely CCs that I know go around for people to find groups for Nightmare, so maybe it's
Who's getting the ice cream?
I would, but I'm busy.
A couple of breaks, please.
Yeah, but yeah. Sorry, that just threw me off the
that a little bit.
Group finder and teleporting people instantaneously. I think that's where you are.
Do we have like a I know we have like Theatre of Blood and stuff on the minigame finder. Do we have one for Nightmare? Would it be worth putting something like that in, so at least people have like a CC they can jump into?
There's no problems adding it's actually pretty easy. I've done it before. Adding a chat channel on that, you just don't have a teleport that takes you there. It's straightforward.
Yeah, maybe something like that could be a reasonable thing to help people group until we decide whether we want to downscale it. Yeah.
I think generally stuff like group finders and LFG systems are, in some games, done quite well. Other games you'll have a whole swells of the community saying it makes the game less sociable, it makes the game less public. You don't meet people more organically. I'm not a big fan of it. I prefer finding the right people to group with, friends or clans or whatnot. One thing I'd like to point people towards is, again, the Gazette yesterday, because Mod Ash and Mod Boko shared a really interesting bit of insight into the clan's development. Stuff like when you look at the clan screen, you can be able to set certain interests, whether it be boss hunting, raiding, PvP, socializing, role-playing. It might be possible that rather than just boss hunting generally, we can signpost individual bosses. What's the bigger priority? So I'm hopeful once we've actually got the clan system integrated and added to the game, if you're struggling to find that fifth person, it'll be made easier because the clan system and clan discovery will be done more easily.
Yeah.
Cool. Anywho, we are 5 minutes over where we said we'd be, and I know Mod West is eager to run after that van and get himself an ice cream. Well, I think we're 1 o'clock.
He's already gone.
It's gone. It's too late now.
Mod Arcane did a straw poll in the chat about the drop rates.
Okay.
It has 54% yes and 46% no for should we release them. It's only 240 votes, but that's more even than I thought it would be.
More decisive Brexit.
There's nothing stopping us putting an exploratory question on a future poll to say, how do you feel about this, with multiple answers. So theoretically in the future we can do that. We can just ask the players.
I've had that question a lot, like even asking me about kit drop rates. And internally, we've just kind of, because we don't have a stance on it, we say it's up to the devs whose content it is to release them whenever they see fit, right? And for Ancestral kits, it would be Arcane. For Ring of Endurance, it would be me. And those are the two that people are bothering about right now. So, yeah.
Okay, Arcane's posting a link again. I'm going to quickly vote.
Yep.
We're all jumping on to vote ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, I think I say this quite a lot. I'd like a proper defined stance on stuff like drop rates, when it's going to come out. And not just that, also when we start talking about new content. Managing player expectations is what I'd like to be able to get at. So do you know X amount of time has passed, or it's X amount of time until the release? What type of information do they start getting and when? I think it's a bigger discussion to have than just having this Q&A. But for an update on the Strawpoll, number of participants almost doubled. We're just under 500 votes now. 53% say yes, they would like to see drop rates revealed or new content released, and 47% say no.
Which, the number of votes doubled, but the percentage is shifted by 1. And I think that's something so interesting. People say like sample size is important, but I remember reading something. It was like if you get a completely random sample size of like 400 people, you basically already know. And I think we also see that internally because we can see the results of polls ahead of time, like at least like internally. Yeah. It very rarely changes from like the first like 2,000 to 3,000 people voting, right?
Yeah. Even those votes were public, because obviously it's very rare that you get there right in live, but obviously I always know when it's going live. So even then, like in the first few years, I was always looking at the polls like first couple hours. Yeah, you're right, it's surprisingly always the same, 1,000. It's always quite weird. Obviously, sometimes campaigns by the players that can sway things, but
I'm surprised that those two numbers are as close as they are, to be honest. I expected it to be more massively in favour of people wanting the rates, but it appears that they are just more of a vocal majority as opposed to anything else.
Does that encourage you? You know, you're not alone in not wanting the rates.
I know, that makes me incredibly happy that people don't want them as well.
Okay. I can confirm in chat, because how do we know that the Ring of Endurance isn't 1 in 10k? I can confirm it is not 1 in 10k. There you go. Now you know.
That'll be the last stream. Let's wrap up.
I'm going to
Animal Crossing to do.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, let's wrap it up. Okay. I won't put the announcements again. First of all, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again next week. Right, from us, Twitch Prime 14-day free membership is still active, but it ends next Tuesday. So !Prime to find out how to take advantage. Or actually, probably best to just click the crown at the top of the screen. That's probably easier than reading something else. Darkmeyer is out now. Had a bit of a slow start to the release, including a rollback, but that's all sorted. Some more changes to come, some XP rates to tinker with, and some graphical things we're going to fix. But we are going to fix them. Darkmeyer to find out more. Yesterday we released a very, very long blog. I'd recommend it. Grab a cup of tea and then settle down for like a night of reading. We talk about PvP, we talk about a new Wilderness Hub, we talk about art style, we introduce you to 2 new mods, we give some insight into the clan systems and kind of interfaces and the administrative powers you can have as a clan leader. Really good bit of insight there from Ash and Boko. And that's it from announcements. So I'm going to say thank you very much for watching. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.